The cafe fell silent as the coffee cup shattered against the floor. What happened next would change everything for single father Jack Reeves and his 8-year-old daughter Emma. No one expected a simple morning coffee to end with a former Delta Force operator revealing skills he'd kept hidden for years, or that the beautiful stranger in the corner would become so important to their lives. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Jack Reeves adjusted his worn leather jacket as he guided Emma through the door of Westside Café, the morning chill following them inside. The jacket, like Jack himself, had seen better days but remained sturdy and reliable. His dark hair was cut short, not military short anymore but practical, with flecks of gray at the temples that made him look older than his 35 years. The lines around his eyes told stories of both laughter and pain. 3 years of raising Emma alone had taught him to treasure these small moments. Weekend breakfast before her soccer practice, just the two of them against the world. "Dad, can I get chocolate chip pancakes?" Emma asked, her eyes bright beneath her unruly copper bangs that matched her father's hair color. She had her mother's smile though, the kind that lit up her whole face and made strangers stop to smile back. "Half order," Jack smiled, the corner of his mouth lifting in that crooked way that made him look boyish despite the weathered face. "Coach says no sugar bombs before practice." As they settled into a corner booth, Jack noticed her. Impossible not to. Seated alone by the window, sunlight catching in her long silky blonde hair as she typed intently on her laptop. Her elegant fingers moved across the keyboard with purpose, occasionally pausing to tuck a strand of hair behind her ear, revealing a delicate profile. Something about her quiet focus drew his attention, though he quickly looked away when she glanced up, her clear blue eyes briefly meeting his. What Jack didn't notice was the group of men at the counter, particularly the one in the expensive suit who'd been watching him since they entered. Brandon Wells stood with the confident posture of someone who believed the world existed for his benefit, tailored suit, manicured nails, and a smile that never quite reached his cold eyes. "Well, look who it is," a voice called out, too loud for the quiet cafe. "Jack the Dropout Reeves." Jack's shoulders tensed, his hand instinctively moving to shield Emma. He knew that voice, Brandon Wells, former high school football star turned real estate developer. The same Brandon who'd made Jack's teenage years miserable with his cruel taunts and privileged arrogance. "Not now, Brandon," Jack said quietly, his deep voice controlled but with an edge that would have warned off anyone with sense. He was conscious of Emma watching with wide eyes, her small fingers nervously twisting the end of her braid. "Still wearing the same jacket from high school?" Brandon laughed, moving closer, bringing with him the scent of expensive cologne. "Heard you're fixing cars now. Big step down from most likely to succeed." "Huh." The cafe had grown uncomfortably quiet. The barista, a college student with purple hair, stopped mid-pour. An elderly couple by the door exchanged concerned glances. Jack felt his daughter's small hand slip into his, her palm slightly sticky from the syrup she'd already sampled. "We're just having breakfast," Jack said evenly, his jaw tightening. "Please leave us alone." Brandon leaned over their table, his manicured hand splayed on the surface. "Single dad now, right? Not surprised she left. Always knew you'd end up." What happened next occurred so quickly that witnesses would later disagree about the sequence of events. One moment Brandon was looming over their table, the next he was flat against the wall, Jack's forearm pressed firmly against his throat, not choking him but holding him immobile with such precise control that everyone in the cafe froze. Jack's eyes, usually warm brown, had turned to something harder, colder, the eyes of a man who had seen things most people couldn't imagine. "You don't talk about my family," Jack said, his voice barely above a whisper but carrying in the silent cafe. "Not ever." The look in Jack's eyes made Brandon pale beneath his expensive tan. It wasn't rage, it was something colder, more controlled. The look of someone who knew exactly how much pressure to apply and had used that knowledge in situations far more dire than a cafe confrontation. Then, as quickly as it happened, Jack released him and returned to Emma, who sat wide-eyed but unafraid. She knew her father would never hurt her. Never let anyone hurt her. "Sorry about that, sweetie," he said gently, his voice transforming back to the dad she knew. Sometimes grown-ups forget their manners. The blonde woman was watching now, her laptop forgotten, a slight smile playing at the corners of her full lips. There was something in her expression, Not fear or shock like the others, but recognition, perhaps even approval. Brandon straightened his suit, face flushed with humiliation, a red mark forming where Jack's arm had been. "You'll regret that," he hissed before storming out with his friends, his expensive shoes clicking angrily against the tile floor. What no one in that cafe realized was that this confrontation would set in motion events that would test Jack's long-buried skills, threaten everything he cared about, and perhaps, just perhaps, offer a second chance at happiness he never thought possible. If you're enjoying this story so far, hit that like button and let me know in the comments if you've ever stood up to a bully. 3 days later, Jack was closing up the auto shop when his phone rang. His hands were still stained with engine grease despite the thorough scrubbing he'd given them. The garage owner, a gruff but fair man named Lou, had left early, leaving Jack to finish the last oil change and lock up. "Mr. Reeves." The voice was unfamiliar, tight with tension. "This is Westside Elementary. There's been an incident with Emma." Jack's heart stopped, his free hand gripping the wrench he'd been holding so tightly his knuckles turned white. "Is she hurt?" "No, but there's been some trouble at after-school care. We need you to come immediately." 20 minutes later, Jack strode into the school office, still in his work clothes, the scent of motor oil clinging to him. He found Emma sitting alone on a plastic chair, clutching her backpack to her chest like a shield. Her freckled face was tear-streaked, her usually bright eyes red-rimmed and downcast. "What happened?" he asked, kneeling before her, his calloused hands gently tilting her chin up. The principal, Mrs. Hernandez, appeared from her office. She was a small woman with a commanding presence, her salt and pepper hair pulled back in a severe bun. "Mr. Reeves, Emma was involved in an altercation with another student. Normally we'd issue a warning, but given the circumstances." "What circumstances?" Jack asked, his protective instinct flaring. "The other child is Brandon Wells' son, Tyler. Mr. Wells is demanding Emma be suspended." Jack's jaw tightened, a muscle working in his cheek. "And what exactly happened?" Emma looked up, her voice small but determined. "Tyler said you were a loser and that's why Mom left. He said his dad was going to make us move away because nobody wants us here." Jack felt cold anger rising but kept his voice calm for Emma's sake. "And then? I told him he was wrong. When he laughed, I pushed him." Emma's chin trembled, a tear escaping down her cheek. "I'm sorry, Dad." Jack hugged her tightly, breathing in the scent of her strawberry shampoo. "It's okay, Em." Mrs. Hernandez sighed, removing her glasses to pinch the bridge of her nose. "Mr. Wells is on the school board. He's insisting on a 3-day suspension. For a push." Jack stood, his full height making the small office seem even smaller. "That's ridiculous." "I agree," said a voice from the doorway. "Which is why I'm here." Jack turned to see the blonde woman from the cafe, now dressed in a tailored charcoal suit that accentuated her slender figure. A leather briefcase hung from her shoulder, and her hair was pulled back in an elegant twist that highlighted her high cheekbones and clear blue eyes. "Sophia Winters," she said, extending a manicured hand. "I'm an attorney. May I speak with you both privately?" Mrs. Hernandez looked startled. "Ms. Winters, this is a school matter. One that involves potential abuse of power by a board member," Sophia replied smoothly, her voice carrying the polished confidence of someone used to being heard in courtrooms. "I'd hate to see this escalate unnecessarily." 10 minutes later, Emma was cleared with just a warning, and Jack found himself walking Sophia to her car. A sleek silver Audi that stood out among the practical sedans and SUVs in the school parking lot. "Why would you help us?" he asked, the afternoon sun highlighting the stubble on his jaw. "You don't even know us." Sophia smiled, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. "I saw what happened at the cafe. Brandon Wells has been using his money and connections to bully people in this town for years." She paused, studying him with those perceptive blue eyes. "Also the way you handled him. That wasn't just anger. That was training." Jack stiffened, his expression closing like a door being shut. "I don't know what you mean." "You don't have to tell me," she said, her voice softening. "But I recognize military precision when I see it. My brother was special forces. He moved the same way. Economical, controlled, deliberate." Before Jack could respond, his phone buzzed with a text. His face darkened as he read it, the lines around his mouth deepening. "What is it?" Sophia asked, concern evident in her voice. Jack showed her the screen. This isn't over. Nobody embarrasses me and gets away with it. Hope you're not too attached to that job or apartment. Brandon, Jack said grimly. He owns half the commercial property in town, including the building where I work and live. Sophia's eyes narrowed, a flash of anger crossing her elegant features. This is harassment. I can help you file for a restraining order. It won't stop him, Jack said, running a hand through his short hair. Men like Brandon don't play by the rules. And men like you? Sophia asked quietly, her gaze steady on his face. What rules do they play by? Jack looked at her for a long moment, something unspoken passing between them. I need to get Emma home. As they parted ways, neither noticed the black SUV parked across the street, its tinted windows concealing the man watching them with cold calculation. A man with a scar running from his ear to his collar and eyes that had seen too much violence to be disturbed by creating more. What Jack didn't know was that Brandon Wells had connections far more dangerous than local real estate, and that before the week was out, Jack would be forced to reveal exactly who he had once been, and what he was still capable of doing to protect those he loved. If this story has you on the edge of your seat, drop a like and comment what you think will happen next. The eviction notice came Friday morning, taped to Jack's apartment door. 30 days to vacate. The building had been sold and was scheduled for renovation. The paper trembled slightly in his hand as he read it, his mind already calculating options, escape routes, contingencies, habits from a life he thought he'd left behind. That same afternoon, Lou, the garage owner, a bear of a man with oil permanently embedded in the creases of his hands, reluctantly informed Jack that the shop's lease wouldn't be renewed. Lou's roomy eyes couldn't quite meet Jack's as he delivered the news, his massive shoulders slumped in defeat. It ain't right, Jack, Lou muttered, twisting his grease rag in his thick fingers. You're the best damn mechanic I've had. But Wells owns the building, and he's tripling the rent. I can't swing it. Brandon was moving fast, systematically dismantling the life Jack had carefully built. Dad, are we going to have to move? Emma asked that evening as Jack tried to hide his worry while making dinner. She sat at their small kitchen table, homework spread before her, twirling a strand of copper hair around her finger, a nervous habit she'd developed after her mother died. Don't worry about it, kiddo, he assured her, flipping a grilled cheese sandwich with more force than necessary. We'll figure something out. The knock at the door surprised them both. Jack approached cautiously, old instincts making him check the peephole first. He opened it to find Sophia standing there, looking concerned, a leather messenger bag slung over her shoulder. She'd changed from her work clothes into jeans and a soft blue sweater that matched her eyes, her hair loose around her shoulders. I heard about the eviction and your job, she said, holding up a bottle of wine. News travels fast in small towns. Jack sighed, the tension in his shoulders visible. Come in. We were just having gourmet grilled cheese. Over dinner, Emma chatted happily with Sophia, who seemed genuinely charmed by the 8-year-old's stories about soccer and science class. Jack watched their interaction, struck by how natural it felt, how Sophia listened intently to Emma's rambling tales, asking questions that showed she was truly paying attention. It had been a long time since anyone had shown such interest in his daughter. Your dad tells me you're quite the soccer player, Sophia said, accepting a second helping of the simple meal. Emma nodded enthusiastically. I'm going to be a professional someday. Or maybe an astronaut. Or both. A soccer-playing astronaut, Sophia grinned. I'd pay to see that match on the moon. Emma giggled, a sound that always lightened something in Jack's chest. He noticed how Sophia's eyes crinkled at the corners when she laughed, how she unconsciously tucked her hair behind her ear when she was listening intently. After Emma went to bed, Jack and Sophia sat at the kitchen table with coffee and the wine she'd brought. The apartment was small but tidy, a home created with care despite limited resources. Brandon's using his connections to run you out of town, Sophia said, swirling the wine in her glass. But I think there's more to it. He's been making calls to people outside his usual circle, people with connections to organized crime in Chicago. Jack raised an eyebrow, his hands wrapped around his coffee mug. You've been investigating him? Let's just say I've been curious about his business dealings for a while, she replied, a hint of steel beneath her polished exterior. There are rumors about where his development money really comes from. Money that appears too quickly. Projects that get approved despite environmental concerns. Why do you care what happens to us? Jack asked directly, his brown eyes searching her face. You don't know me. You don't owe me anything. Sophia hesitated, vulnerability briefly replacing her professional composure. My brother. The one I mentioned? He died 3 years ago. Combat-related PTSD that the VA failed to address properly. Her fingers tightened around her wine glass. When I saw you at the cafe, the way you moved, the look in your eyes, I recognized something. She met his gaze. You're carrying something heavy just like he did. Jack was silent for a long moment, the ticking of the kitchen clock loud in the quiet room. I was Delta Force for 8 years. For deployments. I left after my wife died so Emma wouldn't lose both parents. I'm sorry, Sophia said softly, instinctively reaching across the table to touch his hand. Don't be. I made my choice. Jack's voice was firm, but he didn't pull his hand away. But now Brandon's threatening that choice. Let me help you fight this legally, Sophia urged, leaning forward, her eyes intense. I have evidence of questionable dealings that could. The window shattered before she could finish. Glass sprang across the kitchen floor. Jack reacted instantly, tackling Sophia to the ground as 2 more shots punched through the wall above them. His body covered hers protectively, his movements precise and automatic, the muscle memory of a man trained to respond to danger. Emma! Jack shouted, already moving in a crouch toward his daughter's room. His heart pounding with a fear more profound than anything he'd felt in combat. Emma was sitting up in bed, eyes wide with fear, clutching her stuffed rabbit. Jack scooped her up and returned to the kitchen where Sophia was pressed against the wall, phone in hand, a small cut on her cheek from the flying glass. Police are on their way, she said, her voice remarkably steady despite her shaking hands. A lawyer's composure, Jack thought, even in crisis. Jack set Emma down beside Sophia. Stay here, away from the windows. Where are you going? Sophia grabbed his arm, her fingers digging into his bicep. Whoever's out there came for me, Jack said, his eyes now cold and focused in a way that transformed his entire demeanor. The kind father vanished, replaced by something harder, more dangerous. I'm not letting them get close to Emma. Before Sophia could protest,